Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video, everybody. So this is going to be a little bit of a different one than my usual Destiny content. So among the Destiny videos that I make, another passion that I have is music. So I want to do a series where I basically go through a bunch of beats that I've made and explain different techniques that I've used and kind of my process in making beats. And that way you'll get some information so that you can make beats of your own and we can just have a good time here. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So the beat in question, my last beat I made, I haven't really made a name for it yet, but this is kind of the gist of the beat, so I'll play this now. Alright, so I think one thing that I gotta say before we start is that I am maybe a year and a half into my beat making process. So some of the stuff that I do isn't gonna be the most advanced things or just the way I like to make beats. So for one, I think, well, mainly let's just start off with most of my beats that I make are hip hop or rap beats, so like either like boom bap or trap or R&B, that sort of thing. Where the melody isn't as clear as, oh, it's not really a melody, it's more a use of percussion and different kind of cool elements. I way prefer making songs like that rather than focusing really heavy on the melody. So I focus more on the drums and the bass, and then having percussion kind of lay that mid-frequency layer to get some cool sound effects rather than having a melody do that process. Some of my beats do have melodies, a lot of them do, but if it does have it, they're very simple, kind of one note, two note, very simple chords kind of style. So I think the best way to start out explaining the beat is how I start making the beat. So you'll hear a lot of people, I start with the melody, some people I start with the drums, some people I start with, well, that's kind of the main two. I guess you could start with the bass, but I'll only really start with the bass if I have a certain kind of melody in my head. So the first thing I want to talk about is the drums that you kind of use and the similarities and the style of the drums. So when you're making your drum pattern and your drum set, you want to have similar sounds that go well together. Boom bap drums are kind of like what they're meant to be. Is you got a heavy kick and you have a snare, so it's like boom bap, boom bap, boom bap. It's kind of just like this very simple. And then trap drums are more of these lighter kicks. So I'll solo the. So they're very muted, and they're kind of just like a bass line for the drums. So some people, they have their own way. Like I have this board here. This MIDI board, a lot of people have to make their beats. So I have one and I use it, but I usually use it to get an idea. So I have a button here that I can click to make my kick. So you can go like. Actually, if I'll put this one, so it's like I'll solo this and I'll. So some people are like, will make their things based off of the BPM and just kind of how they're feeling. It's like da 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 da. That sort of thing. I get that to get a feel, and then when I have an idea, I come and lay it down. I'm not the best at kind of manually putting it in myself. I don't have the best timing yet. It's getting there, but it's a little tricky. So I like to write in. So if we pull up this layer here, which is I have my drum on the drum rack, and then we go to the individual layer. You gotta click this button to be able to listen to it, and then you can kind of lay it out, and so you get pretty familiar with how it kind of sounds. So this one we have a kind of like a swing, so it's like the first beat's on, the second beat's off, and then the third beat's on, so it's like da da da. So that's, instead of having, if we put this one on a beat, so it's 1 2 3 4, it's like 1 2 3 1 2 3. But this way we have a 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 1 2 3, and it kind of adds like a little bit of it adds a sort of swing to it. It's like da 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 da, and then you can switch up and like da 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 da. Having differences in the drums definitely makes it sound more unique. If you have the same thing, the same da 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 da, and then you have that going the whole time, it's gonna get repetitive. So you want to have a switch up. The main switch up that I hear a lot of people use is the AABC method. So the first part is A, which is the same, B is the different part, and then C is whatever. So it can be the same as A, or a fourth unique one. So this is like. So that's exactly the same, and then we switch it up, da 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 da, and then we go back to the original. So like that. So that's kind of the groundwork. So now that we have the foundation, the kick, now we want to add the snare, which in the majority of rap and hip hop is like the stability of your beat. If you have some really tight, really nice snares, it can add a grounding. It sounds a little weird, but it adds a grounding to your beat. So it makes it a lot easier to rap on and a lot easier to flow on because it's the foundation. So in this case, let me solo this as well. So we got. So this last part's like a little bit of a flare. So the snares are pretty linear. You can get. I wouldn't say. I don't think you should far astray from the kind of groundwork of snares in where you place them. You can obviously you can like change it around. We'll talk about that in a second. Where you put the snare, but overall, the foundation should be the same. And what I mean by that is the timing on where you put the snare. So the music, all the music that I'm going to be making and explaining are all in a 4/4 countermeasure, which is 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4, and snares will go on the 2 and the 4. However, when it comes to trap music with high BPMs like 140, having the snare on the 2 and the 4 will sound like this. So it's a lot of snare action. So instead we go in the 3 and the 7. So it just spaces out somewhere. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. 1 2 3 4. And then we can start to get a little bit busy with our. We don't want to get too busy, but this can add some really cool interactions. So this will be kind of like oft-timed snares with it. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. 1 2 3 4. So those are all. They're not all off, but you can play around with how it sounds. But there kind of is a right and wrong. Well, there's not really a right and wrong when it comes to music, but if, let's say, for example, I have a little bit back. You see how it doesn't really sound as good, but if I have it a little bit further, it also doesn't sound, but there's like a sweet spot, you know what I'm saying, with how off it can be. So it adds a kind of bounce to it, if you will. So now that we have the kick and the snare, we have the foundation and the control of the beat, we can start adding some more areas. So I like to think of it in terms of frequency ranges. So we have the kick, low. We have the snare, it's kind of a medium to high. Now we want to fill out more of that high range. How do we do that? Our hi-hats, which are like the little, on a drum set, it's the, I don't, that's not great. But in trap music, it's the same, but it's electronic, so it sounds kind of like this. A two-step is when you have, it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it'll sound like, let me just, if I just have a very, let me delete this, have a very stagnant, add the snare in there, and then the kick. Boom, we got a drum pattern, but this makes it very robotic because it is on the line every time. It is exactly played on the right bar, and this is what I want to talk about. Well, this is actually more like swing, which is coming off the precision of the 4 countermeasures. So, by kind of, what I like to do with my hi-hats and what a lot of people is they kind of move it back a little bit later. Yeah, so it's a little bit more delayed, a little bit off, and it sounds go a little too far. It doesn't even sound that bad. Like if we pull it back, okay, now you can start to hear it's a little bit too far. But there's kind of a sweet spot where it's delayed, but it kind of adds to it. We can do that with the snare as well by making the snare a little bit earlier. Being the grounding that the snares kind of provide, by bringing them forward, it's almost like, what's a good way to explain this? It's like it really just gives it that hook in the beat when it's like it comes just a little bit early. It just adds that feel. Now this is a little bit, for this kind of a quick song, I wouldn't add this much delay, but maybe that sounds good. If we want to go a little bit further, what we can do is we can add some variation with the velocity of the hi-hat. So if we have the next one a little bit less, and then we have it so it's like this, then all of a sudden we have a little bit more of a live sound. So it's like da, 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 with the second one's not being played, not as powerful. So it's like, so we have that element of it. Go a little bit further, what we can do is we can start making these elements and start adding what you call a now I'm forgetting the names of all these things. You start adding what's called a hi-hat roll, which is in a succession of hi-hats. You have some of them that are not playing to the same degree. So for example, this is a triplet hi-hat, so it's like da 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 da. So it adds a little bit of roll. So this isn't, obviously, this is what I just made. This is what I have for this song. So it's like alright, so we got the hi-hats, we got the snare, we got the kick. It's all coming together here. Now, let's add some bass. Now, the bass is a tough part. Okay, for one, you gotta make sure that the bass is in key. And for one, you will want to have a bass pre-tuned, so you want good samples that are already tuned to, they're in tune already. So when you put it in a MIDI, whatever you put in, whatever scale you want, will be on key. Now, so for this 808, we have it playing on C, so it's like C. And it is playing, if you can tell, is playing the exact same, with a little bit of variation with the kick. Now, you don't want to yeah. Generally, you don't want to stray too far away from the 808 and the kick, because they're trying to accomplish the same thing. What I'd say is they're pretty closely related. The kick is trying to add that bite, and the bass is adding behind it. It's adding volume to that kick. So the kick can only go so far. Let me go back to this. So let's remove that, and we'll just go. I don't know, it's not letting me do that. Okay, so we'll just go kick. It's pretty shallow, but we add bass to that. Have a little bit of behind volume. And of course, more bass. And so if we look at this, and then we copy this, it's playing pretty much on the same, with a little bit of variation, of course. So, now that we have the bass playing similar to the kick, and they're on scale, and we add the snare, and we add the hi-hats. Look at that. We're pretty much I'll say 3 out of 5 the way of making a beat. Well, making the loop, we'll say. 3 out of 5 of making the loop. So this is where most people get, in my experience, this is where I get. I'm like, alright, I got a bass. Now let's lay down some melodies. I go to the piano, I'm like, I'm putting some stuff in, I'm like, wow, this sounds like hot garbage. A lot of hip hop beats where you have, it's just a classic, you have a rapper and they're rapping. The melody is pretty simple, at least when they're rapping. You can get a little bit more extra when it's like a chorus and they're not rapping. But when they're when they're rapping, that's when you want it to be a little bit less. Now, there's a couple ways you can, like I talked earlier, you can make a melody type beat, or you can make one where it's more simple, something kind of like Shook Ones, or something like New York State of Mind. It's like pretty simple. It's like it's got just like the bell in the background and then some simple chords, but overall it's just the drum and the bass and the rapper who's rapping over it. So in this case, this is kind of how I made the melody for this, which is just a perk. So I'm looking through my perks. I like perks, they're kind of cool. So I was looking through my perks, and I was looking through my things, and like, I'm just going to search it out to make it easier, but I was looking through it, and I found this. So I'm like, that sounds really weird. Like, what if I put this down, and we just like copy that a bunch. Let me just remove all this. We'll talk about this later. Let's remove everything here. So, and we have this. So we'll copy this over. Okay. That just sounds goofy, alright? That's it. Oh, let me reset this too. Sounds weird, right? So let's change up a little bit, because if it doesn't work right away, you can always change some stuff. So instead of going like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, it's like a robot. You want to do 1, 2, 1, 2. It kind of follows. Well, it does follow the hi-hats, but it's a little simpler. So it's like, okay. So we're getting there. Okay. That's kind of cool. Now, we can add variation in a bunch of different ways, and one of them is effects, and the other is pitch, and there's volume, and there's a bunch of there's lots of good guides in everything. This is a guide on making beats, but this is through experience of making beats, of figuring out like this kind of thing. So, the first thing I'm gonna try, which is what I was doing. We have this, okay. So pitch is one of them. So what I've added is we have and then on the last two we pitch it down by 6 semitones. So we'll pitch this one down 6 so that we have that's not really lined up very good, but you get the gist. It's a little bit of a change at the end, and it adds a lot. So now that we have that kind of a change up, we already have some resemblance. It's a resemblance of a chorus, but not directly, or not a chorus, of a melody, because it has change in pitch, but it's still a percussion. We're just changing the pitch of it. Let's go a little further. Okay, what does the melody do? It fills up the space. So in the same sense, we can add reverb, which is like adding. It's like adding. It's space. It's just adding space. It makes the sound back here instead of right here. It's back here in terms of the 3D sound. In 3D sound, in terms of 3D sound, it's like back here now. So now it's starting to sound a lot cooler. We can also add some stuff like wide stereo to make it even more. I wouldn't add it that much, but something like that would be good. Now, one thing we'll get to the end, I'll talk about later, is mixing. We're going to just remove the low end because we don't want to clash with the already low end of the bass and of the kick. So that's a little bit cleaner. So we're pretty much there. The last thing I want to do with the effects is a compressor. What is a compressor? I don't actually know what a compressor is. I know it like limits volumes. You can limit the peaks. But the main thing I use it for is by sidechaining, which basically connects it to another line of instrument. What we can do is we can connect it to the kick in the way that it limits the volume of the element when another element is being played. So if we go compressor, external, and then we go source, 4 drum kick. The 4 drum kick is the kick. So then we go back to the compressor, and then we set the threshold in decibels to like -20, so that when a kick plays, the volume will go down to 20 decibels. So then we get this effect. We can kind of change around. We can change the attack on how quickly it comes back. So it's a little bit too volume reduction. So something like this. Yeah, that sounds good. So now that we have that, we'll add that to everything else with the bass. We get, and it kind of sits better with the drums. Alright, perfect. We got the main melody. It's not, I mean, it technically is a melody, but it's not in the sense that we're like we're building out chords, or we're making, it's very simple stuff, just with some cool effects. The last thing I'm going to add is some panning, which basically makes it so that the volume, where the sound is playing, is in different parts of the 3D space. So for this, we're going to go left, right. Very simple. So it's going to go left into right. It makes it very cool and it's a very cool sound to hear in like a car, or even in the headphones when they're 3D. And just like that, we've basically made a beat. We've made the loop. We've got this. Where do we go from here? So we've got the loop. We've got everything we want. And this is when we come to sequencing and arrangement. So sequencing and arrangement is basically how we're going to build out a beat over a song. This is when we turn a beat to a song in 3 minutes. So when you want a beat that's 3 minutes long, or 2 minutes 30, or whatever you want, you need to add variations so that the beat doesn't become stale. So there's lots of ways to do that by changing elements, removing things, adding things, etc. So we're going to go over just a couple of the methods that I use to add variation to the beat. So the first thing I have is a intro. So a lot of times I like to do is I'd like to start with a low frequency band. So this is on the main, which controls all of the other bands. So we have a frequency limiter that's basically at 328 hertz, which is very low in the band. So that you'll see when we start the playing, it's very low. It's very low. And then I have a automation so that as we go on, we increase in hertz. And we do this by right-clicking on frequency and then show automation, and then by clicking, and then we can drag to see where the automation goes. So we'll start with 328, and we'll slowly build. Everything here is pretty much the same except we have no bass. When you have an element that's strong, like a bass, like an 808, by taking it away and adding it in different areas, we can make it more. If the 808 is always playing, you're gonna forget that it's cool. But if you have it and then you take it away and then you give it back, it's gonna sound pretty cool and it's gonna sound much more important. So here we don't start with the 808. We just start with the kick, the drum, the snare, or the kick, the snare, and the hi-hats. But you can't even hear the hi-hats because the frequency is so low. So at this point, the hi-hats will start creeping in, and you can already hear the melody start to take form. And then just before, we have this little gap where there's no drum, there's no kick, or there's no hi-hats, which adds a bit of delay, which is a cool effect that you can add before any change in arrangement, change in the part of the beat, and it just adds some, what's the word? Add some suspense until the main part of the beat. Another thing you can add is risers, which are basically like a sloping. If we search up risers, it's like a sloping sound that leads into the beat or something like that. So, like that, for example, it like builds up. EDM is a notable. This one's I wouldn't use this for any hip hop beat, but notably EDMs use that. For this one in particular, I'm actually using a siren because it kind of has the same feeling. So it comes up, and then in this one we also have a bunch of effects like compressor, so it's gonna play with the kick so that when it's playing behind the beat initially, it's not gonna be as heard. We also have some channel EQ, so we just remove the low end again, remove some of the high end so it doesn't affect that. Add some just simple erosion and reverb effects, and so we get this kind of an intro. So now we're in the beat. We're rolling. It's either about the time that it starts after the fade, or after the first 2 bars, or after the first 4 bars, that the rapper will either start here or here. In this case, we'll reduce the amount of stuff that's happening because when we have a rapper at least starting, we want to have some space for the vocals to go. So we're gonna reduce that by reducing the melody. So instead of having, we have a lot less instrument use, so there's a lot more space for an artist to go. Another way to create space is by, well, it's the easiest way, deleting areas. So this area right here, just before the next part, we just go completely silent. And it can add, deleting areas, ironically, can add the most in a beat. It can be a very cool way to add to a beat. It's just by removing something. Just by removing. Dun, dun. Nothing. We bring it back. We bring it back. And that is a very cool way to add variation to a beat and to add just a cool effect in general. Now, this little thing I got here, I also made by coincidentally doing the same thing with a kick, or with a perk. This is also perk. The reason it's in the same thing is I consolidated it, but it is also a perk that I found. Let's go to it here. Where's it here? This one. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I just put it in here, and then repeat it rapidly so that can I get this sound? And then I literally did the exact same thing with this as I did with the other one. Is I added a compressor so that when the kick went, it would go down. So when we have that all together, let me just. So it's a cool element that we've added to the beat. Now when you have two elements that are a little bit similar, but they perform different things, what you can do is it makes it very easy to do variation. By adding one, subtracting the other, adding both, subtracting. You can really you can get creative here. You can add one, add half of one. You can go like, I don't know, let's just get dumb. Let's just go like this one, and we'll go half, and then we'll go like here, 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 and then all of a sudden, boom. We've just added variation by removing, adding, and changing things around. Did it sound good? I don't know, but I just did it for that was just an example. This is ways that we can basically string it out and add variation. So once we build out enough that we want for where the verse would go, then we can bring it back to the original chorus, or where it would just kind of restart. You don't need a chorus for a lot of hip hop. Well, some of the older hip hop doesn't really have a chorus per se. It just is a linear throughout doing verses, but a lot of new songs have choruses. So it's a repeating element that would come back. So for example, this, we're gonna have that come back with over here. And that could be like your chorus area. So another area of variation that I added is over here, where I basically change where the pitch went. So it's like, I start with the low. Dun, 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 dun. And so that, it basically changes up the melody, in air quotes, the melody of the song. Pause. We remove the hi-hats here, adds a little bit of variation. Over here we have none of these. We've added a lot of variation, so we have different areas that have added and subtracted elements. We have different kinds of perks. We have different effects applied on the beat. Overall, we have a beat that's about 2.5 to almost 3 minutes long that has some variation. The last thing I added, this is kind of just like a flair thing, we've added a little bit of a synth lead here just to add some variation as well. I might actually just increase to go to C4. Back. This is kind of a little bit of a variation, optional. We also have a couple of, just some optional, it's just some kind of flavor to add to the beat. And then we'll end it. One thing I did with this beat that I'll note is called, is basically a note slide. So we go to MPE here and we can see this slide that I've made. So you basically click where you want to start and click where you want to end, and you can make a slide. So we can go crazy. We can even make it like stop there, so it's like, so that can add another level of variation on top of that. So now we have talked about absolutely everything I think that we can talk about for this beat. We made the kick, which is the foundation. Then we went to the snare, which is the control of the beat. Then we went to the hi-hat, which is was like the kind of the swing of the beat. Then we have the 808, the hard pumping heart of the beat. Then we have the melody or the perks which add add melodic elements with also making the beat interesting, with also other perks that change in variation, and effects that add other things that also add variation, and then we arrange it in a way that it changes so that it stays interesting. We have an intro, we have an outro, and possible places for choruses, and that is the main part of the beat. The last part of any beat is by doing what's called mixing. So I am in no way a mixing prophet. In no way am I a mixing professional or even close to that. But from my understanding, is we want to balance it in a way where it sounds similar to the same kind of genre. So it doesn't sound like other trap songs in the way that the drums sound, in the way that the bass sounds, in the way that all the elements sound. Does it sound similar in that, like how much bass it has compared to other songs, how much high and low, and we can change accordingly. One of the main practices I always do is I make sure that all of the instruments that aren't the bass and the kick are completely no low in it, or as little as possible. So all of these are going to have just completely low, just no low, so that it can give the bass and the kick the most amount of room to breathe. So that is why I do that. And then for just general mixing, we want to just look at the overall channel. So we'll go to the middle of the beat, go to main. We've got a lot of low, which is good for hip hop. We've got a good amount of high. We're lacking a little bit right here in this area, which is fine because this area is where vocals sit, which is exactly what we want to do. We want to leave some room for the vocals. A lot of times when people are making beats, and I do the same, is they'll be like, "Oh, this is empty. This is missing something." And 90% of the time, that's just vocals, and then you end up adding elements that cover the area that would have otherwise covered vocals, and then you get something that isn't rappable over, that isn't a beat that people want, and you don't want that. So this is the beat that I've made and the breakdown of all the elements. If you want to watch a video on everything to do with Ableton and setting that up and all of that, go watch someone else, because I'm sure they can do a better job than I can of ever explaining. But this is a breakdown of my latest beats. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, make sure to like and subscribe and support me and my channel. I do this for fun, but also it's a passion of mine, so I hope you really enjoy it. And yeah, with that, thank you for watching, and have a good day. I don't know if I should say stay frosty, guardian, because we're not playing Destiny, but I don't know. Stay cool, DJ. Alright, that's the thing. That's what we're doing. Alright, peace.